Commander Laura stood at the observation window of the steady horizon and watched the stars drift by in silence. 30 years had passed since humanity first reached beyond their home system, and in that time they had learned many things about the galaxy. They learned that space was vast and cold. They learned that many species looked upon newcomers with suspicion or contempt, and they learned that kindness was rare enough to be remembered forever. The communication officer turned in his seat. "Commander, we are receiving a distress signal. It is coming from a colony world called Prime." Laura walked to the console and looked at the data scrolling across the screen. The signal was weak and desperate. A colony of the species was under threat from the Dominion, a militaristic civilization that absorbed weaker peoples into their empire. They were asking for help from anyone who would listen. Lieutenant Price stood beside her with his arms crossed. He was a tactical officer with 10 years of experience and a practical mind. He said quietly, "I know that name." Laura nodded slowly. Every human knew that name. It was taught in schools and spoken at ceremonies. 30 years ago, when humanity was still young and fragile in the stars, a colony ship called the New Dawn suffered a catastrophic engine failure in deep space. 2,300 colonists drifted helplessly in the void, their life support failing and their calls for help going unanswered. The galactic community had no interest in saving humans. They were too primitive, too unimportant, too far away. Species after species received the distress call and chose to ignore it. The colonists prepared to die. Then a single ship appeared. It was a vessel commanded by a young consul named. They were not a powerful species. They were physically small and their empire was already in decline. Ship had limited supplies and a long journey ahead. Helping the humans would cost them greatly. Helped anyway. He shared food and water and medicine. His crew worked alongside human engineers to repair the damaged systems. When the repairs proved impossible, ordered his ship to tow the New Dawn to the nearest safe port. It took 3 weeks and nearly exhausted their resources. When they finally reached safety, refused any payment or thanks. He said that helping those in need was simply what decent beings did. Humanity never forgot that day. They called it the kindness at Waypoint 7, and they made sure every child learned the story. Its name became a symbol of compassion. The species became humanity's first true friends in a cold and uncaring galaxy. Now they were the ones calling for help, and the galaxy was ignoring them just as it had once ignored humanity. Laura turned to her communication officer. "Contact Earth Command. Tell them we are changing course for Prime." Looked at her with concern. "Commander, the Galactic Council has already voted to ignore this situation. If we intervene, we could face serious consequences. They outnumber us badly. We have 1 ship." Laura met his eyes calmly. "Then we will be 1 ship that shows up, that saved our people when no one else would. Do you expect me to turn away when they need us?" Was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded once. "No, Commander, I do not." The steady horizon changed course and accelerated toward Prime. As they traveled, Laura reviewed everything they knew about the situation. The Dominion had surrounded the colony world with a blockade. They were not attacking directly, at least not yet. Instead, they were slowly starving the population, waiting for surrender. The colony had a population of nearly 1 million. They had sent distress calls to over 40 species, and not a single one had responded. They were too powerful and they were too weak. It was simple calculation, the kind that the galaxy understood well. But humanity calculated things differently. Laura recorded a message and transmitted it toward Earth. She explained the situation clearly and simply. They were in danger. The same species that had saved their colonists 30 years ago was now facing extinction. She was taking the steady horizon to help them, and she was asking for any ship that could be spared to join her. She did not know if anyone would answer. She did not know if it would matter, but she knew that she could not live with herself if she did nothing. The journey to Prime took 4 days. During that time, Laura received a response from Earth Command. They could not officially sanction her actions, but they understood her reasons. Several ships were being redirected to her position. How many would arrive and when was uncertain. On the final day of travel, Laura received another message. This one was personal, from an old friend who served in the colonial administration. He reminded her that the captain who had saved the New Dawn, the young consul named, was still alive. He was elderly now and had retired to Prime years ago. If the colony fell, he would fall with it. Laura read the message 3 times. The man who had saved 2,000 human lives was now trapped on a dying world, waiting for help that would not come. She thought about fate and coincidence, and the strange ways that history moved in circles. The steady horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Immediately the sensors showed the blockade. 15 warships surrounded the planet in a tight formation. They detected the human vessel at once and began broadcasting warnings. Laura ignored the warnings. She opened a channel to the planet's surface and spoke clearly. "Prime, this is Commander Laura of the human vessel Steady Horizon. 30 years ago, your people saved ours when no one else would. We have not forgotten. We are here to help." There was a long silence. Then a voice responded, thin and tired but filled with sudden hope. "Human vessel, this is Elder of the colony. We did not expect anyone to answer. We do not understand why you have come." Laura smiled softly, "Because we remember, and because humans always pay their debts." She ended the transmission and looked at. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them we have arrived and we are not leaving. Tell them we have a debt to repay." The Steady Horizon moved toward the planet. One small ship against 15 warships, carrying nothing but determination and a memory that had lasted 30 years. The surface of Prime showed the marks of a slow and terrible siege. From the shuttle window, Laura could see fields that had once been green now turning brown from neglect. Buildings stood dark without power. The streets below were empty, and the people had retreated indoors to conserve what little resources remained. Lieutenant Price sat beside her as the shuttle descended toward the colony's central plaza. "They have been blockading this world for 2 months," he said quietly. "Supply ships cannot get through. The population is running out of food and medicine." Laura nodded but said nothing. She had seen the reports. She knew the numbers. 1 million were slowly starving while the galaxy watched and did nothing. The shuttle landed gently, and Laura stepped out into the pale sunlight of an alien world. A small group waited for her in the plaza. They were shorter than humans, with thin bodies and large dark eyes that seemed too gentle for a universe this cruel. Their skin was a soft blue, and they moved with careful, delicate motions. At the front of the group stood Elder, the colony's leader. She was old by standards, her movements slow but her gaze sharp. Beside her was a male even older, leaning on a simple walking staff. His eyes were fixed on Laura with an expression she could not read. Stepped forward and spoke in the common galactic language. "Commander, I must confess that when we received your transmission, I believed it was a mistake. No one answers calls from thee anymore. We are too weak to matter." Laura shook her head firmly. "You matter to us. You have always mattered to us." The old male beside made a soft sound of confusion. "I do not understand. Humanity is young among the stars. Our peoples have had little contact over the decades. Why would you risk yourselves for us?" Laura studied him for a moment. There was something familiar about him, something in the way he held himself despite his age. "What is your name?" "I am. Once I served as a consul aboard a diplomatic vessel. Now I am simply an old man waiting for the end." Laura felt her heart tighten. She had hoped to meet him, but she had not expected it to feel like this. She was standing before a legend, a name spoken with reverence across all of human space. "Consul," she said softly, 30 years ago, you commanded a vessel that found a crippled human colony ship. 2,300 of our people were dying in the void. Every other species ignored their calls for help. You did not." His large eyes widened. "You know of this. Every human knows of this. Your name is in our history books. Children learn about you in school. We call that day the kindness at Waypoint 7, and we celebrate it every year. You saved our people when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. We have never forgotten." Stood very still. His thin hands trembled on his walking staff, and Laura realized that he was weeping. Tears rolled down his blue face in silent streams. "I did not know," he whispered. "I thought it was a small thing. I thought no one remembered." Laura stepped forward and took his hand gently. "We remember everything, and now we are here to repay our debt." From somewhere in the distance, a warning siren began to wail, checked his communicator and frowned. "They are broadcasting again. They are demanding that we leave immediately or be destroyed." Laura looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, 15 enemy warships waited. She had one ship. The odds were impossible by any reasonable measure. "Send a reply," she said calmly. "Tell them we are not leaving. Tell them that if they want this world, they will have to go through us." nodded and transmitted the message, watched with a mixture of confusion and hope. "Commander, I am grateful beyond words, but you cannot fight the alone. They will destroy you, and then they will take our world anyway." Laura smiled. "We will not be alone for long." As if answering her words, the communication device in her hand began to buzz with incoming signals. She looked at the screen and felt a warmth spread through her chest. Messages were arriving from across human space. Ships were changing course. Captains were volunteering. Civilians were loading their vessels with supplies and medicine. "The word has spread," said with quiet pride. "Everyone wants to help. They are coming from everywhere." That night, Laura stood on a balcony overlooking the darkened city while they tried to sleep. Joined her there, moving slowly but with purpose. "You have done something remarkable," he said. "Your people are coming to save us because of one act of kindness 30 years ago. I do not understand such loyalty." Laura considered her words carefully. "When humanity first reached the stars, we were afraid. The galaxy seemed so vast and cold. Species looked at us with contempt or ignored us entirely. We felt alone." She turned to face him. "Then you came. You showed us that compassion existed among the stars. You taught us that not everyone was cruel or indifferent. That lesson shaped everything we became. We built our culture around the idea that kindness matters, that debts must be repaid, that the universe can be made better if we choose to make it so." Was silent for a long time. "I was only doing what I believed was right." "That is exactly why it mattered," Laura said. "Kindness is most powerful when it asks for nothing in return. You gave us hope when we had none. Now we will give you the same." In the distance, lights began to appear in the night sky. They grew brighter and becoming dozens of points of light descending through the atmosphere. Laura watched them come, and for the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to feel something like joy. His voice came through her communicator. "Commander, the first wave of ships has arrived. 12 vessels with more on the way. Admiral Cole is leading them. She sends her regards and says that her mother was on the New Dawn. She has waited her whole life to repay this debt." Laura looked at, whose eyes were fixed on the gathering lights. More and more ships were appearing, filling the sky with tiny stars of hope. "What is happening?" he asked in wonder. Laura put a hand on his shoulder. "Humanity is remembering, and when humans remember kindness, they return it with everything they have." The lights continued to gather as the night wore on. By morning, the sky above Prime would be filled with human ships, and they would begin to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. 3 days passed, and the human fleet continued to grow. From every corner of explored space, ships came to Prime. Military vessels arrived with weapons ready. Civilian freighters came loaded with food and medicine and blankets. Private yachts and cargo haulers and research vessels all made the journey, their captains answering a call that no one had officially sent. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Enduring Promise, and watched the tactical display with quiet satisfaction. 47 human ships now orbited the planet. They still outnumbered them, but the gap was closing. Commander Laura arrived via shuttle to report in person. She found the Admiral studying star charts and calculating trajectories. Cole was a woman in her late 50s, with hair cut short and eyes that missed nothing. Her mother had been a child on the New Dawn when saved them. She had grown up hearing stories of kindness, and she had waited her entire career for a chance to repay it. "Commander," said without looking up, "your message reached us quickly. I believe every human who heard it felt something stir in their chest." Laura nodded. "I hoped for a response. I did not expect this." Smiled faintly. "You underestimate what the kindness at Waypoint 7 means to our people. My mother spoke of that day until her final breath. She said that, and his crew gave humanity more than survival. They gave us a model of what we wanted to become." On the planet's surface, the work of mercy continued. Human medical teams had set up clinics in every major settlement. Dr. Henry, a veteran aid coordinator, directed the distribution of supplies with calm efficiency. Children who had been weak from hunger were now eating their first full meals in weeks. Healers who had run out of medicine were now treating patients with human medical supplies. The mood in the colony had shifted from despair to cautious hope. Who had prepared themselves for death now spoke of the future. They watched the human ships in the sky and whispered to each other in amazement. Moved through the relief station slowly, observing everything. He watched human doctors tend to patients with patience and care. He watched human engineers repair power systems that had failed weeks ago. He watched human soldiers share their rations with hungry children. An elderly woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "Consul, is this real? Are we truly saved?" Took her hands gently. "I believe we may be. These humans have come to repay a kindness I showed them 30 years ago. I never imagined such a thing was possible." In orbit, the fleet watched the growing human presence with growing unease. War leader or stood on the command deck of his flagship and studied the sensor readings. He had expected the humans to flee at the sight of his forces. Instead, they had called for reinforcements. He opened a communication channel to the enduring promise. "Human commander, I demand an explanation for this intrusion. The world is under jurisdiction. Your presence here is an act of war." Admiral Cole responded calmly. "War leader, they have called for help, and we have answered. We have no interest in conflict with the Dominion. We simply ask that you withdraw and leave this world in peace." Or's voice hardened. "Why do you care about these weak creatures? They offer you nothing. They have no resources, no strategic value, no power. They are insignificant." Was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke in a tone that was soft but carried the weight of generations. 30 years ago, they saved 2,000 of our people when no one else would help. They shared their food with our hungry. They gave their medicine to our sick. They towed our crippled ship to safety when it would have been easier to leave us to die. They asked for nothing in return. They simply helped because it was right. She paused. "You ask why we care about them. The answer is simple. We remember what they did for us. We teach our children about their kindness. And when someone shows us compassion in our darkest hour, we do not forget. We carry that debt with us forever, and we repay it when the chance comes." Or was silent. He did not understand what he was hearing. The valued strength and conquest. They took what they wanted and discarded what was weak. The idea of traveling across the galaxy to repay an old kindness was incomprehensible to him. "This is foolishness," he said finally. "You risk war with the Dominion over sentiment, over memory, over gratitude." Nodded even though he could not see her. "Yes, that is exactly what we are doing. And I promise you this, war leader. If you attack this world, you will face every ship we have. Every human who can carry a weapon will come here to fight. Because this is not about politics or strategy. This is about who we are. This is about what we believe matters." The communication ended, or stood in silence, troubled by feelings he could not name. On the surface, found Laura near one of the medical stations. She was helping to unload supplies from a cargo shuttle, working alongside her crew without concern for rank or dignity. "Commander," he said softly. She straightened and smiled at him. "Consul, how are you feeling?" He considered the question carefully. "I feel as though I am dreaming. 3 days ago, I believed I would die here with my people. Now I watch your ships fill the sky, and I cannot understand why." Laura set down the crate she was holding. "Do you remember what you told the human colonists after you saved them? My mother was on that ship. She was young, but she remembers your words." Shook his head. "I said many things, it was long ago. You said that kindness costs nothing, but means everything. You said that the universe is cold and vast, but we can make it warmer by choosing to care for each other. You said that one act of compassion creates ripples that travel farther than we can imagine." Laura gestured at the sky, at the ships, at the humans working all around them. "These are your ripples, Consul. You threw a stone into the water 30 years ago, and the waves are still spreading. Everything you see here began with your choice to help strangers who had nothing to offer you." Looked up at the stars with wonder in his ancient eyes. Somewhere up there, ships from across human space waited to defend his world. Volunteers had traveled vast distances to help people they had never met, all because of one decision he had made when he was young. "I did not know," he whispered. "I did not know that kindness could be so powerful." Laura put a hand on his shoulder. "Now you do, and soon the whole galaxy will know too." In orbit, more ships continued to arrive. They watched and waited and wondered what would happen next. War leader or looked at his tactical display and saw something he had never expected to see. He saw an enemy that would not be intimidated by numbers or threats. He saw a species that valued gratitude more than survival. He saw humans, and for the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt the cold touch of uncertainty. The battle began at dawn on the 5th day. War leader or had waited long enough. His superiors in the Dominion were demanding results, and his own warriors were growing restless. The humans had refused to leave, and so they would be destroyed. It was simple calculation, the kind they understood perfectly. Admiral Cole watched the enemy fleet move into attack formation from the bridge of the Enduring Promise. Her face was calm, but her heart beat faster. 47 human ships against the Armada. The numbers were not in their favor. "All vessels prepare for combat," she ordered. "Remember why we are here, remember who we are protecting, and remember that today the galaxy is watching." The first missiles launched in a brilliant wave of fire. Human ships scattered into defensive patterns, their pilots trained for exactly this kind of desperate engagement. Point defense systems activated, filling space with the flash of intercepted warheads. Commander Laura stood at the tactical station aboard the Enduring Promise, directing fighter squadrons and coordinating fleet movements. She had studied tactics for years. She knew how they fought. They relied on overwhelming force and expected enemies to surrender when the odds turned against them. Humans did not surrender. Humans had never learned how. The first hour was brutal. 3 human ships took heavy damage and fell back from the line. A civilian freighter that had come loaded with medical supplies was struck by debris and began venting atmosphere. Its crew sealed the breaches and returned to the fight. Lieutenant Price commanded a squadron of fighters from the cockpit of his own vessel. He led his pilots in daring strikes against capital ships, targeting engines and weapon systems with precision. When 2 of his fighters were destroyed, the survivors reformed and continued attacking. Or watched the battle unfold with growing frustration. The humans fought like no enemy he had ever faced. They did not break when their ships were damaged. They did not retreat when their comrades fell. They regrouped and adapted and struck back with terrible determination. "They should have fled by now," he muttered to his tactical officer. "Any reasonable species would have surrendered." The officer was silent. There was nothing reasonable about what the humans were doing. On the planet's surface, the watched the sky light up with distant explosions. Stood in the central plaza within hundreds of colonists, their eyes fixed on the heavens. "They are dying for us," said quietly. "Those ships are being destroyed trying to protect our world." Nodded slowly. He felt the weight of every human life lost as though it were his own burden. These people had come here because of something he had done 30 years ago. Their blood was being spilled because of his kindness. He did not know how to carry such a thing. Then he made a decision. He walked to the communication center and asked to broadcast a message to the fleet. The human operators looked at him with surprise but granted his request. His voice traveled up through the atmosphere and into the cold void of space. "This is Consul of the... I'm speaking to the warriors of the Dominion." Or received the transmission on his bridge and listened with contempt. "What does this old fool want?" Continued. 30 years ago I commanded a small ship that found a crippled human vessel. 2,000 of their people were dying. I chose to help them because it was the right thing to do. I did not expect thanks. I did not expect to be remembered." His voice grew stronger. But the humans remembered. They taught their children about that day. They built monuments and wrote songs. And when they heard that my world was in danger, they came. Not for power or wealth or territory. They came because I showed them kindness once and they wanted to repay it. Paused. "Look at your censors, war leader. Look at the humans fighting and dying to protect a world they have no claim to. Ask yourself what you are truly fighting against. You are not fighting for conquest. You are fighting against gratitude. You are fighting against compassion. You are fighting against the idea that kindness matters." The transmission ended. On the bridge there was silence. Several captains had been listening. They began sending private messages to each other. Some of them had served for decades and grown tired of endless conquest. Some of them had families and wondered what legacy they were building. None of them had ever encountered an enemy like this. The battle raged on. Human ships took damage and kept fighting. Pilots ejected from crippled fighters and were rescued by comrades. Engineers worked frantically to repair systems while under fire. Doctors treated wounded crew members in shaking medical bays. Then something extraordinary happened. New contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. Ships were arriving from an unexpected direction. Checked the readings and felt her breath catch. They were not human ships. The first to arrive was a cruiser, its hull painted with symbols of peace. They were a species that humanity had helped 10 years ago when a plague threatened there. Human medical teams had worked for months to develop a cure. Now they were here to repay that debt. Behind them came a formation of vessels that had nearly been wiped out by a natural disaster 5 years ago. Human rescue teams had saved thousands of survivors that had not forgotten. More ships appeared, species that humanity had helped in times of crisis, species that had received kindness and remembered it, species that had learned from human example that gratitude was not weakness but strength. Or stared at his tactical display as the new vessels joined the human formation. 30 ships became 50, 50 became 70. The numbers were shifting against him. War leader, his tactical officer said nervously, "What should we do?" Or did not answer. He was watching something he had never seen before. He was watching the galaxy unite against him, not through fear or alliances of convenience, but through bonds of gratitude and kindness. On the enduring promise, allowed herself a small smile. She opened a channel to the Allied fleet. "This is Admiral Cole. To all vessels that have come to help, we thank you. Today we stand together, not as separate species, but as friends. Let us show what happens when you threaten those we love." The Allied fleet surged forward. They found themselves fighting on multiple fronts against enemies they had never expected to face. Their formations began to break. Their captains began to doubt. Price led his remaining fighters in a daring run against Or's flagship. They struck the engines with precision, crippling the massive vessel. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull. Or felt his ship shudder and knew that the battle was lost. He had come to conquer a dying world. Instead, he had awakened something far more dangerous than any military force. He had awakened the memory of every kindness humanity had ever shown, and those memories had come to collect. The fleet retreated as the sun rose over Prime. War leader Or transmitted a final message as his damaged flagship limped away from the battle. His voice was different now, stripped of its earlier arrogance. "Human commander, this is not over. The Dominion does not forget defeats." Admiral Cole responded calmly, "Neither do we, war leader. We do not forget victories. We do not forget kindness. And we do not forget those who threaten our friends. Return here again and you will find us waiting. You will find everyone we have ever helped waiting beside us." The transmission ended. The ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind debris and the wreckage of their ambitions. Cheers erupted across the Allied fleet. Human crews embraced each other on damaged bridges, and pilots transmitted messages of congratulation. On the planet below, they emerged from their shelters and looked up at the sky where their saviors orbited. Laura stood at the observation window of the enduring promise and watched the enemy disappear. Her body was exhausted, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in years. They had done it. They had actually done it. Joined her at the window. The Admiral's face showed the strain of command, but her eyes were bright with satisfaction. 12 ships damaged, said quietly. 47 casualties, 3 dead. They gave their lives for this. Laura nodded solemnly. They will be remembered. Their names will be added to the monument at Waypoint 7. Their families will know they died protecting something that mattered. Was silent for a moment. My mother would have been proud today. She always said that what did for us was not just an act of rescue. It was a lesson in how to live. She said that if we ever had the chance to repay that lesson, we should take it without hesitation. We did, Laura said softly. We took it. The fleet remained in orbit for 3 more days as repairs were completed and wounded crew members were treated. On the surface, the work of rebuilding continued. Human engineers helped restore power systems. Medical teams trained healers in new techniques. Supply ships distributed enough food and medicine to last for months. The Galactic Council sent a formal protest to human space, demanding an explanation for the unauthorized military intervention. Ambassador responded with a simple statement that was broadcast across known space. 30 years ago, they saved 2,000 human lives when no other species would help us. They asked for nothing in return. They showed us that compassion existed among the stars. Today, we have repaid a fraction of that debt. We make no apology for this action. We are proud of it. The statement caused a stir throughout the galaxy. Species that had ignored the distress calls now found themselves questioning their choices. Species that had dismissed humans as unimportant began to look at them with new eyes. On Prime, a ceremony was held in the central plaza. Thousands have gathered to honor their rescuers. Admiral Cole and Commander stood beside Elder and Consul as speeches were given and thanks were offered. Spoke last, His voice was thin with age but clear with emotion. "When I saved those human colonists 30 years ago, I did not think I was doing anything remarkable. I saw people in need and I helped them. It was simple. It was what any decent being should do." He paused and looked at the human officers standing nearby. But the humans understood something that I did not. They understood that kindness is not just an action. It is a seed. It grows and spreads and multiplies. It creates bonds that cannot be broken. It builds bridges between strangers. It transforms enemies into friends. Gestured at the sky. "Today I have seen what my seed became. I have seen ships from across the galaxy come together to protect my world. I have seen species who were once strangers stand as allies. I have seen the power of gratitude made real." He turned to face Laura directly. "You have given me the greatest gift any being can receive. You have shown me that my life mattered. You have shown me that one small act of compassion can echo across the years and change everything." Laura stepped forward and took his hands gently. "You taught us how to be better. You showed us what was possible. Everything we did here was because of you." After the ceremony, Laura and walked together through the recovering city. Children ran through the streets again. Markets were reopening. The sound of laughter had returned to a world that had nearly died in silence. A young girl approached them shyly. She could not have been more than 8 years old, her large eyes filled with curiosity. "Consul," she said softly, "my mother says the humans came to save us because you helped them once. Is that true?" Knelt down to meet her eyes. "Yes, child, it is true." "But why did you help them? You did not know them." Smiled gently. "Because they needed help and I could give it. That is all the reason anyone needs." The girl thought about this for a moment, then she looked at Laura. "Will you help other people too, people who need it?" Laura knelt beside. "Yes, that is what we try to do. When someone shows us kindness, we remember it, and we try to pass that kindness on to others who need it." The girl nodded seriously, as though she understood something important. Then she ran off to join her friends, her small feet carrying her toward a future that had almost been taken from her. Laura and watched her go in comfortable silence. "The galaxy will change because of this day," said finally. "Species are already talking about what happened here. They are questioning the old ways of thinking. They are wondering if perhaps there is another path." Laura nodded. "That was always the hope, not just to save your world but to show everyone what is possible, to prove that kindness is not weakness, that gratitude is not foolishness, that caring for each other is the strongest force in the universe." Looked at her with something like wonder. "Do you truly believe that?" Laura smiled. "I know it. I have seen it. Today the galaxy watched a species travel across the stars to repay a kindness given 30 years ago. They watched enemies become allies. They watched strangers become friends. They watched the impossible become real." She put a hand on his shoulder. "You started this. You threw a stone into the water all those years ago. The ripples are still spreading, and I believe they will keep spreading for a very long time." In the weeks that followed, the story of Prime spread across the galaxy. It was told in council chambers and market squares, in ships and stations, in schools and homes. Beings of countless species heard about the humans who had traveled across the stars to repay a debt of kindness. Some dismissed it as foolishness. Some called it propaganda. But many listened and wondered. They wondered what it would mean to be remembered like that. They wondered what it would feel like to know that a small act of compassion had saved a world. They wondered if perhaps the universe did not have to be cold and cruel. And slowly, one conversation at a time, things began to change. On Earth, the annual celebration of the kindness at Waypoint 7 took on new meaning. The name of was spoken with even greater reverence. Children learned not just about what they had done for humanity, but about what humanity had done in return. The lesson was simple but profound. Kindness matters. Gratitude matters. The bonds we forge through compassion are stronger than any weapon, and when someone helps us in our darkest hour, we carry that gift with us forever. Humanity had proven it, and the galaxy would never forget.